Hi. So, you would like to improve your English fluency. You'd like to speak more like a native English speaker. Do you know what we mean by fluency? Do you know what accuracy means? And what's the difference between fluency and accuracy? Well, I'm going to tell you in this video. But also, have you ever heard of the Lexical Approach? You know what that is? I'll explain. I'm going to talk about accuracy, fluency, and the difference. And then I'll discuss the Lexical Approach to learning or improving your English. The longer I worked overseas, the more I started to hesitate before using an idiom or colloquial, everyday, common expressions with non-native English friends and colleagues, even with those whose English was pretty accurate. You see, all too often, the meaning went right over the heads. Over the heads. There's another idiom which just came naturally. If something goes over your head, you don't really get the full meaning of it. The reason it went right over their head is because very little attention is paid to them, these colloquial expressions, in conventional English teaching. The focus, as you'll know, tends to be on correct grammar, vocabulary, and usage of English. So this leaves learners at a disadvantage when they communicate with native English speakers, and then they'll get frustrated trying to understand everything that's being said to them. I've become even more aware of this while teaching higher level learners and helping them prepare for exams such as Cambridge Advanced English C1 and Cambridge Proficiency C2 and IELTS at scores of 6.5 and 7 and above. Learners come across confusing expressions in text or in speech, which makes comprehension more difficult. And yet knowledge and use of them is going to help them in the speaking part of the exam, get extra marks for them. You already know some English, but get frustrated because you can't speak English, like a native English speaker, and can't always understand what people say to you. Well, here in this video, you'll find some tips and advice to help you speak English more naturally, using phrases and expressions which are used every day by people who live and are native to English-speaking countries. It focuses on lexis rather than grammar. Lexis is another way of saying vocabulary. But this video isn't a dictionary. The focus is not on individual words, but chunks of words, blocks of words, which are strung together in ways that knowledge of grammar is not always helpful in understanding. And it takes elements of the lexical approach, which I've mentioned. So what is the lexical approach? It's a method of teaching foreign languages described by a man called Michael Lewis in the early 1990s. Students are taught to be able to perceive, that's to notice, patterns of language, grammar, as well as meaningful set uses of words at their disposal. at their disposal means available to them when they're taught in this way, using the lexical approach. But let me emphasize here, the way we use it, the way I'm suggesting that you use it, is not a substitute for grammar and accuracy. It's a supplement, an addition. Now, you may have studied English at school. You learned it by speaking to other English speakers, or perhaps by watching films and TV programs. You may even be a non-native English speaker, that is to say, a teacher of English whose first language is not English. You may or you may not be a confident speaker. You may feel that your grammar is pretty accurate. You'd benefit from learning more to improve your fluency. If you learned English at school, it's likely that, especially in the early years, the main focus was on grammar, probably with a few phrases at the very start to help you to build up your confidence. And then, perhaps you use a course book, which would progress through stages of grammar and vocabulary, often introduced in situations. Situations such as introducing yourself at the restaurant, asking for directions, at work, on holiday, in a family situation, and so on. You learn the present simple, present continuous, and then past tenses and past simple and present perfect, and ways of thinking about the future, and focusing on being accurate. But then you'd watch a TV program or a film in English and get lost. I don't mean physically lost, as in losing your way. I mean losing the meaning of what was being said, and you become frustrated because you thought your English was pretty good and accurate, or at least grammar-wise. Well, here's where we need to look at the difference between what we mean by accuracy and what we mean by fluency. Accuracy. Accuracy refers to how correct your use of the language is. So, of course, we don't say, I have been to the bank yesterday. We don't use present perfect, do we? No, we use past simple. I went to the bank yesterday. The event's finished. So, we use past simple. We wouldn't say, I wish he will come tomorrow. Of course not. I wish he'd come tomorrow. Using would. Accuracy demonstrates your ability to use the necessary vocabulary, grammar, and punctuation correctly. The skill of being accurate is particularly important for written assignments at university, such as essays, and for lab reports. Accuracy is also very important in the workplace, where a report or typed presentation, if it's riddled with grammar mistakes, riddled means there's a lot of them throughout, then it will be judged as unprofessional and reflect not only on you, but on your employers. So that's accuracy. Now let's look at fluency. Well, as opposed to accuracy, you might be fluent make your meaning clear, but not accurate. You might make a lot of mistakes. Fluency is the flow and efficiency with which you express your ideas, particularly when speaking. A few grammar mistakes may appear here and there in the explanation, but your speech would be delivered in a way that's easy to understand and shows how comfortable you are in using the language, even though there are those grammar mistakes. In an academic or even professional setting, it's one of the skills to focus on for an oral presentation or a debate. Where you explain your topic or prove your point is smooth and clear and concise, and it's as important as the content of your presentation if you want to keep people with you, to keep them listening. And outside of the classroom, of course, Fluency can help you socialise with native English speakers and avoid misunderstandings and just make your conversation more enjoyable for you and for the people you're socialising with. So, which is more important, fluency or accuracy? Well, of course, they're not competitors. Both are equally important. When you learned your own language as a child, you didn't learn grammar, did you? You learned words, lexically. And as you grew older, by listening and repeating, you learned how to string those words together, put them together into phrases and into sentences. Later at school, you discovered the parts of speech and the rules of using those combinations of words. But when you were speaking, you didn't think about grammar. It just came naturally. What happens is that you, as a native speaker, as your own language, had a vast stock of what we call lexical chunks to call upon, to use as you wanted, when they were necessary. And it's these lexical chunks, these blocks of language that are vital for fluent production. So now, let's look more closely at the lexical approach. It's our ability to use lexical phrases that helps us to speak with fluency. This prefabricated speech, prefabricated means something that's in pieces but which you can put together, like a prefabricated house or prefabricated furniture. You assemble it. It's in chunks, it's in bits, and you put it together. So this prefabricated speech has both the advantage of more efficient retrieval, to retrieve something is to get it back, and of permitting speakers and learners to direct their attention to the larger structure of the discourse, the conversation, the explanation, rather than keeping it narrowly focused on individual words as they're produced. Now, that sounds a bit complicated, but all it means, really, is that you've got blocks, you've got chunks of language which you can call upon and use easily, and therefore have a more fluent conversation. You can pay attention to what you're trying to say, the meaning of what you're trying to say, rather than searching around for the right individual words and putting them together. It's quicker, it's easier, it's a more fluent approach. The basic principle of of the lexical approach is then language is grammaticalized lexis rather than lexicalized grammar. In other words, lexis is central to creating meaning. Grammar plays a subservient managerial role. If you accept this principle, then the logical implication is that learners should spend more time developing their stock of phrases and less time on grammatical structures. Well, that's pretty contentious, isn't it? Contentious means argumentative. It's one approach. So hold on. I'm not suggesting for 1 minute that you throw grammar out of the window. Have a look at the two groups of sentences below. The left column shows incorrect grammar. I go to the zoo yesterday. I go to the zoo now. I go to the zoo tomorrow. The right-hand column shows the correct grammar. I went to the zoo yesterday. I am going to the zoo now. I'll go to the zoo tomorrow. So, the sentences in the left column are grammatically incorrect, but we can understand what the speaker is saying because meaning is not carried by grammar, but by lexis. So now, we'll keep the correct lexis in the left-hand column, but look at the column on the right, how drastically the meaning of the above sentences would change if tomorrow was used instead of yesterday, or if park was used instead of zoo. Let's look again so I can try to make it clear. Above, in the left column, the grammar is incorrect, but we can understand what the speaker meant, can't we? I go to the zoo yesterday. He or she went to the zoo yesterday. I go to zoo now. He or she is going to the zoo now. I go to zoo tomorrow. He or she will go to the zoo tomorrow. But now, look what happens if in the examples in the right-hand column we change the words, we change the lexis, but keep the grammar correct. In the right column, by replacing yesterday with tomorrow and zoo with park, it's not the wrong grammar that changes the meaning, but the lexis, the vocabulary, the words tomorrow and park. So now we can't understand what the speaker is saying. Can you see that? And the importance of lexis in imparting meaning, getting over the meaning. But let's remember that vocabulary is more than individual words. A lexical approach focuses not on individual words, but clusters of words, groups of words. Or, as we call them, lexical chunks. fixed expressions, semi-fixed expressions, collocations, phrasal verbs, or idioms. So, let's have a look at some of these. Here are some examples of fixed expressions. As a matter of fact, you use a matter of fact to give more details about something that's been said, or an explanation of it, or something that contrasts with it. English is difficult. Well, as a matter of fact, it's quite easy. Upside down. Well, up, the upside is down. My cup is now upside down. Fortunately, there was no coffee or tea in it. I remember at school, we used to have another word for it, children have another word for it, topsy-turvy. And once we were given an essay title, I was very young, I think it was primary school, to write about a topsy-turvy world, a world in which everything was upside down. And I remember thinking that's illogical, really, because if everything was topsy-turvy, upside down, then to everyone living there, everything would seem normal. So I didn't choose that title. Topsy-turvy, upside down. If I were you, of course you know this one is a second conditional. It's usually used when you're giving advice. If I were you, I'd study harder. If I were you, I'd go to the party. You might enjoy it. A long way off? Of course it can mean distance. The town is a long way off. The sea is a long way off from where we live. But it can also be used for time. The time when I can speak English fluently is a long way off. So it's not only used for distance, it can be used for time expressions as well. Out of my mind. Oh, I'm going out of my mind. This has a couple of meanings. It can mean, if you say someone is going out of their mind, it could mean that they're going mad, they're going insane. But more usually, it's not used as extremely as that. You say, every time I see her, she's always talking about her new house. It drives me out of my mind, sends me out of my mind. So, out of my mind can mean something, if something sends you out of your mind, it frustrates you. By the way is used to introduce something into the conversation that's not directly connected to what you talk about. I could say, oh, by the way, it's 2 o'clock in the morning here. Oh no, it's nearly 3 in actual fact. By the way, it's nearly 3 in the morning here in England. All of a sudden is just another way of saying suddenly, perhaps a bit more dramatic. I was walking down the street and all of a sudden this man jumped out in front of me. He wanted my wallet or whatever. Not too bad, thanks. Not too bad, thanks is typically English. Someone says, how are you? How are you doing, Steve? I could say, okay, thanks. I'm fine, I'm well. I can also say, not too bad, thanks. Not too bad. Which basically means the same thing as I'm okay, I'm alright, I'm fine. You can extend not too bad, thanks to not too bad, thanks. Could be better. Not too bad. Thanks. Come on, get a move on. Get a move on simply means hurry up, hurry. We're going to be late. Get a move on. It's what you can shout to your kids or to friends when they're delaying, when they're behind time. Get a move on. Semi-fixed expressions. Semi-fixed expressions are phrases that keep the same basic word order, but can change some of their parts. Could you open the door, please? Okay, no need to get impatient. Could you open the window, please? Ah, that's better. Fresh air. Could you open the can, please? I'm ready to eat. I'm hungry. Could you pass the sugar, please? Could you pass the bread, please? Could you pass the remote control, please? Hello, nice to see you. I haven't seen you. Followed by a time expression with 4 or 6. Hello, nice to see you. I haven't seen you since 1990. Hello, nice to see you. I haven't seen you for weeks. What was really interesting was the museum. What was really shocking was when the ghost jumped out. And what was really annoying was the queue at the airport at check-in. Collocations. A collocation is a word or phrase that's often used with another word or phrase in a way that sounds correct to people who have spoken the language all their lives. Speak about having a strong accent. This lady has a strong accent. I think she's Italian, the way she's using her hands. Totally convinced. This lady is totally convinced that her plan for the company is the right one. Terrible accident. Did you hear there's been a terrible accident on the motorway? Many cars involved. A heavy smoker. This man is a heavy smoker. It's bad for his health. A golden opportunity. This lady has a new job. It's a golden opportunity. Great fun. We enjoyed the fun fair. It was great fun. We never say very fun. Great fun. Sick and tired has nothing to do with being sick. It means that you're angry and frustrated. This lady is sick and tired of having to phone up the company because the workman hasn't arrived. This poor girl's also sick and tired because her mother is always criticizing her. She doesn't want to hear. Knife and fork. We never say fork and knife. Always knife and fork. Phrasal verbs. Phrasal verb is a phrase that consists of a verb with a preposition or adverb or both, the meaning of which is different from the meaning of its separate parts. It can be split, so I can say, I call up someone, meaning to phone, or I call someone up. To drop by.
is to call in to see someone. Head up. These climbers are heading up the mountain. They're going upwards. This man heads up a company. He's the chief executive. Leave off has different meanings. This lady is leaving off her work and going home. This man wishes his wife would leave off shouting at him. Stop shouting at him. She's angry because he's left the cap of the toothpaste. To grow out of. This girl has grown out of her jeans. They're too tight. The same with this lady. She's grown out of her jeans. It looks like she's put some weight on. These boys have grown out of playing video games. They're older now. Look down on. Of course, we can look down from our apartment, look down at the scenery below. Another meaning is to be superior, to feel superior, and look down on other people as not being as good as you, as being inferior. Shrug off. To shrug is to raise your shoulders. To shrug off is to say, oh, it's not very important. The problem is not very important. Take up. You take up a new hobby. My grandma's just taken up hang gliding, and she's 86. This couple have taken up jogging. They're thinking about entering a marathon next year. Switch off. Of course, we switch off the lights. We can switch off the television. This lady is switching off her computer, and she's also switching off herself. She's relaxing. She's becoming switched off. This guy seems switched off. He's not very with it about something, not very bright about something. He's not switched on. Unlike this professor and his students, they're very switched on about physics. Wear out. This man's socks are worn out. You can see his toe. These jeans are worn out. It looks like they need repairing. Or maybe it's a new fashion. This man is worn out. He's tired. He's had a long day at work. He's ready to go home. Flat out. These workers are working flat out to finish a product. You can also drive flat out, very fast, like this driver is doing. Hard up. If you're hard up, you've got little money, or none at all. Send off. Of course, you can send off a letter, post it. If you're a fan of football, you'll know that the referee and sent someone off. Call off. Call off means to cancel. You may cancel a meeting. A show may be cancelled. This poor girl is sad because her fiancé has called off their engagement. Idioms. An idiom is a group of words in a fixed order that has a particular meaning that's different from the meanings of each word on its own. Now some you can work out the meaning of, but others are really obscure and you just need to know them. Let's have a look at some. To make ends meet. To make ends meet means to pay for the things that you need to live. He's just lost his job and he's finding it hard to make ends meet. These people are finding it very hard to make ends meet, and they're receiving food from charity workers. In contrast, we have make a bundle, which means to make a very large amount of money, especially by doing something very successfully. In broad daylight. If you say that a crime is committed in broad daylight, you're expressing your surprise that it's done during the day when people can see it, rather than at night. To look like $1 million. If you feel $1 million, feel like $1 million, you feel very attractive and well dressed. Once in a blue moon. If we say that something happens once in a blue moon, we mean that it happens very rarely. To give someone a hard time is to criticize, annoy, or make trouble for someone. This woman is giving her husband a hard time. Perhaps he hasn't collected the firewood. This man is giving his team a hard time. I'm glad he isn't my boss. To run out of time means to have no more time to do or complete something. We ran out of time and didn't finish the project. This man is late. He's run out of time to catch his train. To be ahead of time. If you do something ahead of time, you do it before a particular event, before you need to be well prepared. This man has arrived for his appointment interview. Now he's getting impatient. To break the bank means to be very expensive or too expensive, to cost a lot of money. Now usually this is used in negative statements. You can buy that television in the sale. It won't break the bank. At the crack of dawn means early morning. This lady likes to get up at the crack of dawn. This man likes to play golf at the crack of dawn because there aren't many people on the golf course. To dwell on the past. To dwell on the past is to think too much about a past event or events to the point where it upsets you. This lady is finding it hard to move on after her boyfriend left her. This poor woman keeps talking about the past to the point where her husband gets angry with her. Maybe she's talking about his past affair. To have the time of one's life means to enjoy oneself very much, to have lots of fun. This couple had the time of their life sailing. I can't really understand why he's wearing a tie. Perhaps he's just finished work. This girl's having the time of her life skydiving. I hope a parachute will open. To live beyond one's means to spend more money than one can afford to spend. The family who bought this house can't really afford it. They're living beyond their means. This man is buying a car to impress his girlfriend. He can't afford it. He's living beyond his means. Pressed for time. If you're pressed for time, you don't have much time left to do what you need to do. This man is pressed for time to get to work because of heavy traffic. Perhaps he should have left home earlier. To go Dutch. To go Dutch has nothing to do with the people from the Netherlands, Holland, who are called Dutch. They're Dutch people. What it means is to share the cost of something, especially a meal, to pay for your own meal. There's a historical meaning to going Dutch, but we don't have time to go into that now. Cheapskate. A cheapskate is a stingy person. Stingy means mean, who doesn't like spending his or her money. Some people have a lot of money but only shop when there's a bargain to be had. They go to a charity shop even though they're quite rich. On the spur of the moment. If you do something on the spur of the moment, you do it suddenly, without planning it beforehand. This couple are having a picnic on the spur of the moment because it's a nice sunny day. This man starts singing and dancing. He's happy. He does it on the spur of the moment. This couple decided to get married on the spur of the moment. To go with the times means to change, move on, to become more modern, because attitudes or fashions are changing. This man always buys the latest phone. He goes with the times. This woman goes with the times by keeping up with fashion. The older man hasn't gone with the times and can't work out how to use a laptop. If you're under the weather, you feel ill, unwell, sick. This girl has a bad cold or flu. She's under the weather. She's not going into work. This lady too feels under the weather. She's taking her temperature. Comparing apples to oranges. This means to compare two completely different things, but it's useless to compare. For instance, you could compare trucks and cars. What's the point? To pig out. I think this one's fairly obvious. To eat to excess, to eat too much, to be greedy. This girl's pigging out on a large beef burger. This man enjoys his food so much, he pigs out even while he's working. We can tell by the size of him. On the ball. To be on the ball is to be skillful. This football player is on the ball. He plays very well. Also, if someone is on the ball, they're knowledgeable, alert, and deal with things quickly and intelligently. This lady is on the ball. She even takes her work home. This scientist is on the top of her job. She's really on the ball. It's raining cats and dogs. Now, this is an English idiom that most people know, and it's not one which I ever use. I'd be more likely to say it's pouring with rain, it's pouring, or it's throwing it down. Jumping through hoops. This comes from the circus, when animals, lions and tigers were made to jump through hoops. We don't have lions and tigers, we have these two girls doing it. It means to do a complicated series of things to achieve something. This girl's worked through hoops to complete her project. She's delighted. To hit the pillow or hit the sack is to go to bed, to go to sleep. This woman is tired. She hits a pillow. This man takes it somewhat literally and dives into bed. He's hitting the sack or the pillow. Full of beans means full of energy and life, like this man and these girls. They're really full of beans. It takes two to tango. This is said when you want to emphasize that both people involved in a difficult situation must accept the blame. She blames him for the divorce, but as I always say, it takes two to tango. Bat out of hell means moving extremely fast. Bats move fast. If they were escaping hell, they'd move even faster. This motorcyclist is riding like a bat out of hell. You'll probably have an accident.
So now, having explained the importance of lexis and what the lexical approach is, let me ask you, are we on the same page? Well, that's another idiom. It's often used in business. It simply means, do we agree? In this case, can you see why I believe that using the lexical approach, along with other methods of learning English, is important? Let me please emphasize once again that the lexical approach is not a substitute for learning grammar. As a sole method of learning English, it would attract a lot of criticism. All these phrases and expressions are really useful to improve fluency. But to solely attempt to learn English using them would be problematic. Of course, you need to be able to continue and add to a conversation. And to do that, you need to be able to construct, as well as using these prefabricated chunks, as I've called them. But the chunks are very valuable aids to more fluent speaking. You can grab them as required, and they'll make your speech sound much more fluent, much more natural. Even if you don't use them yourself, you need to be able to understand them. This is especially true of phrasal verbs. I really do have a bee in my bonnet, an obsession about these, because they're used so widely. There are so many of them. Now, here's a little exercise. It's a bit contrived, which means artificial, but it gives you an idea of some of the many phrasal verbs that can be formed
using just one verb, the verb to put. So read through it with me, and then look over it again to try and understand the meaning of each of the phrasal verbs I use. And then I'll go through it again and explain. Here goes. In putting over my opinion, I'm not suggesting that learning and using lexical chunks is a piece of cake. But don't be put off simply because many are difficult to get to grips with, and there are so many. That's something you are just going to have to put up with. You need to know them, so don't put off learning and using them. You have to put in the effort. Don't be put out if someone corrects you. It's unlikely that they mean to put you down. Thank them. Then try to put the mistake right the next time. Remember that knowing them is going to help you put over your meaning when having a conversation. And you'll start to understand a lot more when native speakers are putting across their views. I suggest that you put aside your worries, put in the effort, and put your best foot forward. Okay, how did you do? Let's go through them. In putting over my opinion, to put over means to express, to convey, to give. I'm not suggesting that learning and using lexical chunks is a piece of cake. A piece of cake means very easy. It's not. But don't be put off. To put off here means to dislike, to not want to do something. That many are difficult to get to grips with, to know, to learn. There are so many of them. It's something you're just going to have to put up with. To put up with means to tolerate. You need to know them, so don't put off learning and using them. To put off here means to delay, to postpone. You have to put in the effort. Don't be put out. Put out, if someone corrects you, put out here means offended. They don't mean to put you down. To put you down means to diminish you, to criticize you, to make you feel inferior. Make it right next time. Remember that knowing them is going to help you put over, again to convey, to express your meaning when having a conversation. And you will start to understand a lot more when native speakers are putting across their views. Putting across is like putting over. Putting across suggests that they do it very clearly. I suggest that you put aside, you keep until later, or you forget your worries, and put your best foot forward. Put your best foot forward is an idiom. So, how did you get on? Well, lexical chunks in general. How do you go about learning them? Well, just don't allow them to pass you by. If someone uses one and you don't know the meaning, you could ask the speaker to explain. But if it would interrupt the conversation, try to memorize it or them, and then look up the meaning later. See, there's another phrasal verb, to look up. It doesn't mean to look up at the sky. It means to search, to research, to check. Listen for them in conversation. Try to identify them. Try to identify them when reading, when you hear them. There are loads of resources on the internet where you can check the meaning. And of course, you can make sure that you subscribe to and follow me on this channel. I'll be posting many more chunks. Fixed expressions, semi-fixed expressions, collocations, phrasal verbs, and idioms. As you've seen, where possible, I use visuals, images or videos. I use them a lot because I think seeing an example of how they are used helps you to understand. It helps recall. So, thanks for watching. I hope you've enjoyed the video and found it useful. Do hit the subscribe button and please feel free to ask any questions in the comments section.
Bye for now. Take care of yourself and see you again soon. Bye.